Share Shootout brought to you by Lion of Africa Insurance, insuring South Africa's future.
It's quick, it's fast, it's higher grade, and also the most vicious stock-picking show on television. I'm Bruce Whitfield. This is Share Shootout. Now, did AMCU call off its gold strike because it loaned out its best strikers to Bafana Bafana? Speaking of Bafana, was Fikile Mbalula announcing the new team name when he called Bafana a bunch of losers? And what exactly does one happen when one calls a spade a shovel, or Bafana a bunch of losers? Now, we don't know the answers to these vexing questions. What we do know is we have a man who aims to break the record for the most number of consecutive wins, and another who learned the hard way how not to snowboard in a blizzard. Introducing our 3-week champion, 2 appearances, 2 wins, Nick the Wolf of Grayston Drive, Crail from RMB Private Bank. He takes on with 10 appearances, 7 wins and 3 losses, Gary Gordon Gecko of Sandton Booysen from Vunani Private Clients. Okay, house rules are still the same. Pink drinks cost double. Ladies get in free till... Okay, no, that's a bit of a joke. Seriously, our guests have pre-picked 3 shares. Kind of like poker. Nobody knows what the other holds except me, but each has to accept at least one of their competitors' picks. And the longer they leave it, the more likely they are to have to accept something they really don't like. Each has got 30 seconds to argue their stock pick, so let's let the share shootout begin. We heard about your holiday last week, Nick. Decidedly uneventful. You went to the north of the Eastern Cape, and where we know it's terribly quiet and where nobody gets harmed. But in the tradition of Michael Schumacher and Angela Merkel, Gary Booysen took himself off a cliff.
Yeah.
Where's the video?
Next week. I'll bring it next week. If I win.
You assume that you're winning. Okay, sorry, Nick, you're losing. I want to see the video.
Oh, there's YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's, we're from Joburg, so it's traditional Vali thing. If it's storming and raining, you'll swim. But if you're skiing and it's a snowstorm and they say don't go out, we'll go out anyway because we're only there for a short while.
So you went off-piste and then you went off-piste.
And the off-piste wasn't on purpose. That was by accident, and then off the side of the mountain landed in.
Have you ever done anything quite as stupid as that?
No, I'm a clever guy.
You're a clever guy. Well, let's see you prove it, if you don't mind. Right, Nick, Gary, go first.
Yes, he's back from holidays.
He's back.
Didn't hurt his head, I hope.
Well, he's got a long way to go before he hurts his head. And you were in a snowdrift 2 foot above your own head, so that's a damn deep snowdrift. But you survived, and we're happy to see you. And as your reward, you get to go first. Gary Booysen from Vunani Private Clients. In 30 seconds, interesting one, because these are the guys trying to buy Adcock Ingram. They're waiting patiently, and they've drawn the line in the sand. 4th of February, says Brian Joffe, is the last day for he will give Adcock Ingram shareholders an opportunity to participate in his 70 Rand a share largesse. Tell me why you like Bidvest in 30 seconds.
One industrial sector, and obviously Bidvest, a very solid, stable business. Return on equity in excess of 20% for the last 10 years, outperforming the industrial index by, I think it's 1.8% since 1995. It's a very quality business. A PE of 17, not particularly expensive if you consider where the market is, especially in the industrial sector market, about 21.5. Just really a great diversified industrial business, a little bit of stuff offshore as well, and I think a nice addition to any portfolio, something that is going to anchor you and
I like it though, in terms of 1.8% outperformance of the industrial sector since 1995.
Yeah.
Now that is a good track record.
Good track record. I think as a company, probably the thing I wouldn't like about it at the moment is really their interest in Adcock. That whole bun fight that is actually happening, I'm not convinced this would be the time to actually get my hands on Bidvest shares, primarily for that reason. In terms of diversified industrial, I agree. It is very diversified. Brian Joffe's done a lot for that company. Question is, how long is he going to be around for?
Another 18 months at least. I think about 18 months ago he said I'll give it another 3 years until I decide to give it another 3 years if I want to, because nobody's going to say no to Brian.
It could be forever.
It could be forever. I think he's immortal.
Yes, there are some of these out there.
No, I think, certainly he believes it. But Brian Joffe at Bidvest, 88 billion Rand company. It has been spectacular. It is getting on the pricey side though, Gary.
But like I said, compared to other industrials, not particularly priced. A 17 PE in this market, I think that's starting to look fairly reasonable.
The whole market is ridiculously expensive.
No, but especially if you're a relative manager as well. If you're looking at for outperformance versus your industrial index, there's your stock. I hear what you're saying, obviously, about the the succession planning. Again, I think a lot of that is in the price. It's something that's talks about over and over again. Also, you look at the structure of Bidvest. The entrepreneurs in the various business units, they stay involved. They might not have the direction of Brian Joffe at the end, but overall, I think it will be okay. I don't think we're going to see the end of Bidvest because of that.
Now, you wonder whether or not the successor to Brian Joffe, whoever that might be, will do what Hubert Brody did at Imperial. Bill Lynch built up this disparate group, a fantastic business, but just slightly chaotic. Bidvest is more structured, I think, and is a better structured business than Bill Lynch left Imperial. But perhaps there will be some opportunity to come and tidy up, list the offshore assets, all of that sort of stuff. But you're not biting.
I'm not biting.
Using a trout fishing analogy, you're not going in there.
We're talking about 30% offshore, so it's not really a rand hedge on that. It's quite strongly exposed into the South African economy. I'm not sure. I don't think timing's right. It's a no.
It's a no. Shoot it down.
Shoot it down.
You're shot down.
Okay.
Geez, in a snowdrift, you come out of the snowdrift.
Once you're down, you stay down.
Some guy standing on the edge and he's just ready to blat you. Okay, Gary Booysen from Vunani Private Clients. I'm afraid your Bidvest pick is shot down. Nick Crail, let's see if you're more successful with your first pick this evening of, it's a courageous pick, of Exxaro in 30 seconds.
Exxaro, the primary reason you buy this is for their coal assets. Not only their local volumes going up with power stations left, right and centre due to be coming to completion, but also, and more importantly, I think their exports going up. Companies underpinned by a solid iron ore sort of exposure through Sishen Iron Ore Company, and then you've got the blue sky of Tronox, the mineral sands business, at the moment loss-making, but with global growth coming through, that really could provide some solid earnings going forward.
He doesn't use his 30 seconds. That's the way he freaks out his opponents. Leaves 3 or 4 seconds at the end just because I don't need it. I'm such a convincing argument maker. Right, Gary. Do you feel like you may have met your match here, Gary?
Yeah, he's very, very confident.
Quietly confident. Steely blue eyes.
Yeah, I mean, Exxaro, fundamentally, I've heard these arguments before. I like it. I bought into them, years ago, thinking, nice long-term contracts with Madupi, nothing can go wrong. And the share price just underperformed and underperformed and underperformed. And from my point of view, the risk around something like Exxaro, it's a well-run company, don't get me wrong. I think it's excellently managed. It's just, in general, commodity prices, you say, stable underpin, but been looking at iron ore prices that can come off still quite dramatically.
I worry more about coal than I do about iron ore.
But in looking at the coal, let's look at coal, the US coal demand, it's set to be flat and probably decreasing over the next 3-4 years because of the boom in natural gas. So you've got a major market, slipping. Obviously, you're going to come back and say, but what about China? Most of their power stations still coal-fired. Yeah. India as well. Exxaro selling off the low the low sulfur stuff to India. Yes, it's a good story, but I bought into the story 3 years ago and got no performance out of it.
Which means if it's still a good story, now's the time to buy it.
Isn't that the problem? Buying out of a good story 3 years after hearing the good story is
not the whole reason. Like I said, I like it, and if you look at, it's just pretty much my story is that perhaps the commodity prices are not going to hold up as well as perhaps you hope, and without that sort of re-rating, I don't think that you're going to get the major performance that you could.
So are you banking on him having 2 better picks?
Yeah, I think there is. To be honest, I really think that
there's a better pick coming than Exxaro.
There would be a better pick than Exxaro. Yeah, especially with the share price re-rating now off that 140 level up to sort of 158 technical level. Buying it today, I think you've got more downside than upside.
I think if you have a look at the commodity sides, the first is the underpin, I suppose, you get out of a weakened exchange rate. So the dollar price has been remarkably resilient in iron ore prices. However, you're right. The long term is expecting that to come down, but you're seeing the rand. So rand iron ore price is very resilient. In fact, a little bit more boyish. Secondly, on coal, I think it's less about the price of coal, it's about the volumes that they managed to actually sell through, both locally, and yes, you're right, Madupi was supposed to come on stream a while back. It doesn't mean that it's suddenly not going to come on stream, it means it's going to come on stream soon. So that's
we're closer to it coming on stream now than we were 3 years ago.
And secondly, I think the big important part here is actually the exports. They were sort of constrained in terms of the amount of exports of their coal they could get out through Richards Bay Coal Terminal, mainly on the back of Transnet's inability of rail infrastructure, I suppose, but that really has been starting to come through. So we're seeing big volumes come
An impassioned appeal for mercy, but I don't think you're going to get it.
I'm not going to get it.
You're not going to get it, and also because one of your premises is that the rand is going to remain perpetually weak. And maybe it's because I've been looking at this rand so long with no overseas holiday and praying for it to come back. But I think in the short term, when we're looking at this, you said longer term, perhaps you're not going to see the prices coming through. I think in the short term, you are going to see some rand strength, which might just take the shine off Exxaro.
Okay, so it's a no.
For me, it's a no.
So you actually threw yourself off the piste. You looked at the currencies in the morning, realised what it was going to cost you.
Just
and
end,
just
end
like,
the
end it
pain.
now.
Can't
Make it
afford to
stop.
fly home.
So I want to fly off a cliff. Okay, Gary Booysen, let's see whether or not you get a bite from Nick on New Gold Platinum ETF, the Exchange Traded Fund. In the Platinum Exchange Traded Fund, Platinum Mine's on strike. There's not going to be any new production for a little while. There are big stockpiles. Speaking to the guys, they can say they can last 6 to 8 weeks in terms of the stocks that they've got in reserve. If, however, mine workers, like at Northam, stay on strike for 2 months, as they did at Northam, we could very see a bit of a squeeze on platinum supply in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, you've already mentioned obviously the supply side story. It's difficult. I mean, if you look at it, you talk about stockpiles. There's about a year of stockpiles. They say, overall that you can shut down production and, demand could still be met. So the stockpiles have been run up. And I mean, when you're talking stockpiles specifically, it's what is the critical level? When you've got 9 months stockpiles, is that when the market panics and the prices go up? Is it 6 months? Is it, it's a very sentiment-driven thing if you're talking stockpiles. From our side, it's one of the few commodity markets that is in deficit in 2013 and forecast to actually widen its deficit in 2014. I mean,
You must stop. And you even had extra time because I didn't start the clock on time.
Yeah, it was about 3 minutes.
You're thinking,
I had to address,
cheating.
I had to address your concerns.
New Gold
first.
ETF, it's not a share, but you can buy it like a share. You can trade it like a share. So we'll treat it like a share. Do you like it?
I like it a lot more than I like platinum miners at the moment.
Yes.
That is not to say that I would necessarily buy the ETF itself. As a commodity, from what you said previously on commodities and the downward sort of trend, platinum is probably the biggest one that I think guys could be a little bit more bullish about. However, the whole platinum market, we produce 70% of the world's platinum, let's say maybe even slightly higher than 70%. The problem comes in is most of that is, it's bought by sort of 3 big buyers out in the rest of the world, and that means that it's not really a very sort of transparent, market where the price is always going to sort of come through.
But that's where, gold's liquidity have made it a very effective ETF. Is the platinum ETF as effective from that respect?
Sorry, I don't understand. From a liquidity point of view.
From a liquidity point of view. Gold has got a far more transparent, far more open market. There are far more buyers of gold with the 3 big buyers of industrial buyers of platinum. Are they not really the price makers ultimately of the price of the metal?
Platinum, that's set at the London Platinum Exchange. You've got to look at the market. Perhaps not hyper efficient, but to some degree it is efficient. You're looking at it. From an investment demand, you're looking at about probably 700,000 ounces of platinum are going towards pure investment demand. So something like a New Gold Platinum ETF. In a total demand market of about 8.7 million ounces. So that's sort of what you're looking at. So it is fairly small. The majority coming from autocats. From our side, we're looking at the demand side of the story. We're assuming that the prices are going to be efficient. If demand, is outstripping supply, you are going to see a price mover. Now you look at that demand side equation, and then you've got, obviously vehicle sales going positive for the first time in Europe. You've got China sort of almost double-digit vehicle sales now as well. We're seeing that whole market increase, and that demand, even if there's only 3 buyers, it has to come through because they have to service the final demand, which is for the actual cars.
So tell me quickly one thing. They've been autocats have been around for a long period of time. We're seeing a lot of the old metals coming through into the market.
There's a lot of recycling.
It's a lot of recycling that's coming through.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the market was slightly in deficit last year. Yes, on a back where an ETF took how much of that consumption of the actual physical platinum? Quite a large proportion of it. So if there was no ETF, we would have been in massive surplus as it sort of stands.
No, not at all. Like that ETF doesn't take up the full surplus. The current supply is around, I think it's about 7.5 million. So, okay, it just takes it. But you're talking about recycling. That's about 2 million ounces. South Africa only produces 4 million ounces. So, there's recycling.
We have to, lovely argument.
Yeah.
Love the discussion. But now you've got to understand the rules here. I'm just double checking that you understand.
I understand.
Are you sure you understand the rules?
I understand
I'm looking
the
at
rules.
his 3rd pick.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at his 2nd pick, and I'm looking at his 1st pick. Are you sure that you want to shoot this one down?
I was chatting to Gary earlier, and ultimately I think he's a hell of a nice guy, and it would be like him to put the decent share 3rd. So I'm going to have to shoot this down.
Okay, crazy man in the house. It's survival of the fittest, I tell you this on this game, right? So you're shooting it down?
Shot down.
Okay, right. You shot down, Gary, on both Bidvest and on the New Gold Platinum ETF. EFT, I beg your pardon. Is it Exchange Traded Fund, ETF, there we go.
I'm not going to be
not
much
an
ETF,
it's not an electronic funds transfer.
No, you don't want to
You could pay for it with an EFT, but
you could. An
but
ETF
you want
with
the
an
ETF.
EFT.
You could. Okay.
Acronyms, you got to love
Right, let's see whether or not you, Nick Crail from RMB Private Bank, can make a compelling enough case for Gary Booysen from Vunani Private Clients to choose your second share, which is, in the next 30 seconds, please, Richemont.
Richemont. Well, what you're going to be saying about this, I think, quite simply, is a fantastic exposure into emerging market consumers. That hasn't been the underpin necessarily of the stock price performance you've received over the last sort of 12 months. However, I think on a long-term play, it's got great geographic diversification into a market that is going to be going up. And I think, in an environment where you should have synchronized global growth, it's a fantastic position to be in. Secondly, with the other sort of argument I have a look at is they're sitting on a massive amount of cash at the moment, probably about 3 billion euros.
Time up.
Going to be good.
Going to be good. Richemont. Now, emerging markets are slowing down. I went to a presentation at Standard Bank this last week where they're talking about the end of the BRIC dream, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Africa trade. That was their key focus. But just talking about the imbalances, in particular in China, where there's a big bet for Richemont in terms of the rollout of stores and the rollout of retail in that space. Recent trading update wasn't spectacular for Asia. European sales were nice. That's all the Asians going there and buying the stuff duty free.
Yeah.
So I looked at that trading update, and I think your pick is extremely courageous.
Thank
you. Get a point for courage. Does Gary Booysen ever buy the Richemont pick?
Yeah, I do. No, I like it.
There we go.
I mean, yeah, you can talk about obviously, China. Also, they're putting in all sorts of gift giving regulations and all that to try and shoot Richemont down. But fundamentally, I think it's a great business. I mean, fundamentally, it's one of my picks. So I have to go with it. I mean, it's something that I think the value in massively inflating your margins by selling brands. I mean, it's a winner. And I mean,
how much can it cost them really to make a Mont Blanc pen?
It's
not the amount they sell it for.
Exactly.
Or anywhere close.
No, absolutely. And that is the genius of it. I mean, it comes in pretty packaging, which probably costs about as much as the pen to produce. And then they sell you the refills in perpetuity until you lose the pen, because that's what we do with pens, and you buy the other one because you feel like you have to have one.
Not that the refills are cheap either.
No,
let me tell you.
absolutely not. So you'll take it.
No, I think it's a great business. I think also the rand hedge quality, I think you might see a little bit of pressure, but that's an opportunity to get in.
And they've been very clever at tapping the nouveau riche, tapping our desire to be seen to be slightly more wealthy than perhaps we are. It's cheaper to buy a Mont Blanc pen than it is to buy a fancy car. So if you're going into a meeting, you flash your Mont Blanc pen, get into your Mazda 323 that you had from your student days. As long as nobody sees you pulling out of the driveway, you'll be okay.
I think, if you have a look at it from an emerging market consumer, as you sort of go up through the income sort of brackets, there's definitely this aspiration for branded goods. Have a look at ShopRite, Mouchandon sales in Nigeria. More there than in the whole of South Africa. And why? Because
6 ShopRite stores.
That's it. It's
6
a brand.
ShopRite stores sold more than the 600 ShopRite stores in South Africa.
It's a big market.
Market.
With this, you're getting a lot of that emerging market consumer. So we're both on the same. A little high five to both of us.
Okay, no collusion, no friendliness, no niceness. It's survival of the fittest. Who will stay and who will go? Unfortunately, one of our fabulous contestants does have to go. These are the two most ferociously competitive contestants I think we've ever had on Share Shootout. Gary Booysen, who's played this game 10 times, has won it more times than he's lost it. Nick Crail is a fairly recent entrant, but he's an equally determined player and very determined to unseat Gary's dominance. You don't want to miss the final share picks. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Share Shootout right here on CNBC Africa. Before the break, Nick and Gary both gave us 2 of their stock picks. And we had Nick Crail from RMB Private Bank give us Exxaro and Richemont. Richemont was accepted. Exxaro shot down mercilessly. And Gary Booysen's first 2 picks, the new gold platinum ETF and also the Bidvest share, shot down. So Gary's going to go into his third pick, and he's chosen a cheeky little business. But because you went first last time, Gary, I'm going to make Nick sweat because I think it'll be a bit of fun. So, Nick, let's go into the final round with you. One of your shares has been accepted. Let's see whether or not you can get Gary to accept 2 of your shares, because that's always fun when that happens, and it generally secures a victory. So let's see whether or not you can make it a sufficiently impassioned appeal for a great company, a great business, global in its nature, diversified spectacularly worldwide, run out of Durban. The company is Aspen Pharmacare in 30 seconds.
After that intro, I'm not sure I need to say anything else for my 30 seconds. I think the game is done. Basically, the reason you like it is mainly for management. Their great ability to get the deals, then execute on the deals, bed the deals down, get more deals. Great geographic footprint, and fantastic play into emerging worlds, pharmaceutical kind of space, which is growing rapidly. So all in all, it's just a resounding yes.
Gary, your 30 seconds aren't up yet. We've got to fill the time now.
PE a little bit?
Yeah, we talk about the PE, and I mean the PE is sitting at 33 times historical earnings, which even in this market is fairly lofty. But give us a sense, please, on Aspen Pharmacare.
Again, I like the business, so I can't fault you on the business, but I will shoot it down, and that's pretty much. I mean, it's run fairly hard. So I mean, we did actually put us out a sell signal when it got up to about 270 or so. I mean, they've done a lot of acquisitions recently that they still need to bed down, and I think you're going to see that impact earnings. I mean, that PE is lofty. It is going to come down a lot once those earnings start coming through, but there is going to be some, there's some teething issues that I think, and I think that's why the market started to put pressure on the share price. I mean, it's 20, 25, maybe even $30 now off its high, and it's definitely, I mean, it's trending sideways. It's a great business. Steven Saad, amazing manager, and I think one that will do very well. It's in 100 countries. How much growth is there left in this company is also the question. How much more can it dominate? I mean, are you going to see Aspen's share price triple in the next 3 years? I don't think so, to be honest. I think the same thing that happened with Capitec. Lovely growth story all the way up and eventually tops out. Still, great business, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to shoot it down.
Okay, Nick?
Well, I think the idea that it's hitting maturity and there's no way for it to go forward, I think there's more deals. There's lots of opportunity for deals, just very few guys and management teams who can actually attract those deals and bed them down. We have a proven track record of doing exactly that.
Does the health minister in South Africa going completely apoplectic, going fikile against the, that's actually quite a nice analogy, the health minister going all fikile over the very cynical attempt by the global drugs companies to try and push through what they call the ethical drugs into markets and try and manipulate the prices. Does that play into the hands of Aspen?
I think it's positive for Aspen. Ultimately, though, I wouldn't put too much standing on quite a emotional sort of outburst that sort of comes through. Whether rightly or wrongly, that's not going to be the thing that's ultimately going to drive the fundamentals of the company.
Aspen, you like it. Gary likes it, hates the share.
I hate. Yeah, he likes it. He hates the share. Wait a second. Hates the share price.
Hates the share at this price.
Fundamentally likes the story. Short term, I think you're going to see weakness for the next until you see those earnings come through. You're going to need to wait for at least one earnings period to go through before it becomes a buy. I think you're going to see pressure on the price in the short term. That's why I'm shooting it down. Long term, still a good growth story there.
Shot down. He's a short term kind of guy.
I like the price.
Gary. He's got to accept your last share. He's got to accept your last pick. It's
I don't have to.
Yes, you do. It's the rules of the game. Remember, should we run you through those again? You have to find a reason to accept his last share, even if you hate its guts. And it's a very courageous pick. And you've left it till last in Gary Booysen's style. I'm interested. It looks like a load of bull to me. Torre, arriba. In 30 seconds. Tell me why.
Torre, very small micro-cap company. I mean, diversified industrial. The SA French crane business. It's bought a forklift business. It's bought tractor and grader suppliers, downstream mining, machinery, agriculture. That's who they're supplying. Aggressive growth prospects. Forward PE of about 12. Just gone. Some positive earnings coming through the last time. But an incredible growth story. Very qualified management team that comes in. I mean, they've already proved it with the SA French. They've taken the acquisition. They've stripped out the cost. They've streamlined the business, made it profitable, it's outperforming, acquisitive, huge growth prospects.
It sounds a bit like Aspen.
A snatch smaller.
Aspen was this size once?
Exactly. No. I think, the fundamentals of the share, exactly what you say, there's large growth opportunities for it going forward, which means that you're going to ultimately like what the company has to offer. On the negative side of things, yes, you're playing in a very sort of small, high-risk kind of space. So big sort of contracts come through, anything of those sort of lines falls over in that company, you're sort of exposed. So I wouldn't be betting all my money into it, but if you have a look fundamentals on a small stock company, I think it's very good.
You'll accept it?
I'll accept it.
You'll accept it?
I'll accept it.
Are you glad you didn't take the new gold platinum ETF in Bidvest?
Thank goodness. Otherwise, I'd have to shoot this one down, and this one I like. So, it's been a good choice.
Do you believe him? Do I trust him? I wonder. Okay, I've got to make the choice now. I'm going to make the choice. I'm going to make my producers make the choice. Let's make my producers make the choice. Producers, do we take Gary Booysen from Vunani Private Clients, who's Bidvest, new gold platinum ETF, and Torre Industrial Holdings, made compelling arguments, or do we take Nick Crail, who is going into week 3 hoping for a win with Exxaro, Richemont and Aspen? Please, will you help me? I ask for help from above. For the first time in the history of this game, We'll see you both here next week with your video.
Is that what song is?
That's what song is. You were going to lose. We're going to let Nick go through, but we're calling it a tie because we want to see the video and we want Nick to laugh at you. We'll be back again next week, the three of us, as we call it a tie this evening for the very first time on the softest stock picking show on TV. That's it from Share Shootout with lots of hugs. Good night.